In 1984, the United States dominated at the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in almost all disciplines, capturing a total of 174 medals. While this seemed like a moment in time the US would celebrate forever, one country remained absent: the Soviet Union. So this led to the following question: were the Americans really that great? Or did they dominate simply because their biggest competitor didn't bother to show up? Now the question would be answered a few weeks later. In the Friendship Games of 1984, the Soviets outperformed their American counterparts in 28 of 41 disciplines. In the World Gymnastics Championships 1 year later, US athletes went head-to-head against their counterparts from the Soviet Union and Eastern Germany. The result was a devastating blow to the athletic pride of the Americans. The beasts from the East took home 26 medals, while the US athletes who dominated the scene a year earlier in the Olympics were shut out, capturing not even a single position on the podium. Now, there are many more occasions like this that led to an interesting conclusion. In almost all sports, athletes from the Soviet Union and other socialist bloc nations continually outperformed their competitors. Their secrets to success? An unparalleled, scientifically based system of training. A system so sophisticated that it's commonly misunderstood or downright ignored. Politics seem to interfere with accepting the fact that the West is sometimes even going against the largest body of research on athletic training that has been accumulated over decades in the Soviet Union. Routinely, we see Western coaches react with skepticism towards the work of Russian sports scientists, such as the legendary biomechanist Dr. Yuri Verkhoshansky, Dr. Michael Yessis, and many more. Now, the Western coach thinks that player performance is only due to genetics and can only be improved through playing the sport, strategy, and improving tactics. It shows how the US and other countries in the West are still guided by myths and high dependence on luck, rather than by science and clear-cut, effective training methods. The Soviet system, on the other hand, is quite complex and emphasizes the role of technique in execution of game skills and highly specialized strengthening exercises. Other implementations the Soviet system uses are ergogenics, metrology, plyometrics, biomechanics, SPP exercises, autosuggestion, periodization, cycling, and restoration. They even characterize different variations of strength. Now, even though the system seems to be a compounded nexus of scientific papers, its goal is simple: help everyone in the country, from school kids to world-class competitors, achieve his or her athletic potential. Now, you might ask yourself the same question like I have. Is setting up different sets of various rep ranges of specialized exercises really a game changer? The answer seems to be a resounding yes. And the reason for this is quite simple, yet powerful. If you don't have the luxury to draw from a huge pool of thousands of athletes, where chance might have endowed a couple of them with innate talent to perform, then you're left with only one choice. Take the small pool of athletes you have, use every intelligent training approach available, and turn them into superheroes. And that is exactly the reason why the Soviet system is way more advanced than what the rest of the world has to offer. To give you an example, Soviet sports research came to the conclusion that ankle joint extension was the key force producing action in the push-off in running, not knee or hip joint extension commonly believed elsewhere. This is the result of looking at hundreds of runners from the highest to the lowest of skill. Speaking of skill, while we believe that, for example, you simply become better in running by running more, the Soviets had a team of specialists looking at the skill of the runner and each specific joint action. They knew exactly what had to be improved strength-wise. Additionally, they found that nobody was following perfect form or perfect skill from the get-go, but that everybody had to learn and therefore strengthen specific movement patterns in order to improve. Another major difference is the way they treat an athlete's preparation. This prep is so meticulously planned that they could estimate how many years it would take for a masterful athlete to peak. Here in the West, it is common to see a Ronaldo, Messi, or LeBron James do curls, balance exercises, lat pull downs, and other exercises during their athletic journey. Doing different strengthening exercises throughout various stages of an athlete's preparation depends highly on chance. Maybe that deadlift will help you get better, or maybe it will break your athletic performance. Now, the Soviet training protocol is categorized into 4 phases in order to not let luck, chance, or mishaps get in the way. Number 1, the general physical preparatory period, also known as GPP. Number 2, the specialized preparatory period, also known as SPP. Number 3, the competitive period, and number 4, the transitional period. Now, in the GPP phase, in phase number 1, the goal was to improve the athlete's general fitness base to an excellent degree. The athlete would spend no more than 20% playing their particular sport, while the remaining 80% would be spent in the weight room. All major joints, muscles, ligaments, and other structures receive excellent conditioning with special attention to making weak areas strong. The next period is called SPP, or Specialized Physical Preparation. The athlete is now switching gears. 80% of the workload is now becoming selective, with an extremely high correlation to the athletic-specific sport. The volume of work decreases, but the intensity and the complexity of the workouts increase. Here, the athlete's GPP comes into play. Without GPP clearly developed, the athlete wouldn't be able to handle the intensity and the amount of work. Here's an example. An American football player under this regimen would do squats with fast upward motion, jumps out of the squat, split squat jumps, and bench step-ups to stimulate starting leg action. Explosiveness would be handled through depth jumps. Repelling an opponent would be simulated with push-up jumps with a clap. Finally, the true test of months of training arrives. The athlete is now peaking as competitive season starts. In the first stage of this period, they are adjusting their bodies to the competitive environment. In the second stage, however, they are attempting to achieve their best performance of which they are capable of, with no holding back. Here's the interesting part. There's no time dedicated to improving physical strength or level of fitness. Instead, it's all about refining technique and skill. In the final transitional period, the athlete needs a break from their sport and the stress their bodies have endured. The goal here is to prevent overtraining through a so-called minimal effective dose of training. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video how the West was generally impressed but not enthusiastic about the Soviet research, except for one person, the late great Louie Simmons from Westside Barbell. Rest in power, Louie. As I was digging deeper into my research about the Soviet sciences, Louie's approach to training kept popping into my mind. The conjugate method, working with bands and chains, switching between different training periods, and the meticulous attention to detail are hallmarks of Louie's work. The results of Westside Barbell are impressive. Over 140 world records, Olympic gold, and heavyweight world championships, to name but a few of their achievements. Louie trusted the Russian science, and the results speak for themselves. In my research, I also found that Westside Barbell sells books by Dr. Michael Yesses, the legendary biomechanist. His book, Secrets of Russian Sports Fitness and Training, heavily inspired the making of this video. I was even fortunate enough to have a conversation with Dr. Yesses where he mentioned that a great coach should know two things. Number one, exercise physiology. And number 2, an intricate understanding of biomechanics. Louie's upshot of improving any type of performance is this: lightweight athletes have to improve their absolute strength, and heavyweight athletes have to improve their relative strength. This goes perfectly in line with what Ed Cohn, one of the greatest raw powerlifters who ever lived, said in a podcast. I simply made everything strong, and then he followed up by saying, most athletes train too heavy for too long. This doesn't happen if you train according to the Soviet method. Now, in conclusion, I want to make clear that as human beings, we always strive for the least way of resistance. I want things to be clear as day and easy to understand. And in 99% of cases, it makes sense to apply the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. I also want to acknowledge that there are many circumstances where athletes have broken world records, achieved Olympic gold, and reached their peak without the Russian system. Although I'd like to add that they probably might have fared even better with it. A clear, cut and dried way to improve the performance of an elite athlete doesn't exist, unfortunately. It gets highly complicated for a person or a coach to analyze the biomechanical aspects of a runner, for example. One of the reasons why the Soviets had all the specialists gather in one place. Not bickering, not battling, but coming together in discussion to help their athletes become better, stronger, fitter, and achieve the ultimate potential. So even though things seem complicated, Dr. Yeses was clear on this. If you don't have the knowledge, it is complex. If you have it, however, it's simple and easy to understand. Thank you for watching. I highly recommend you to check out Dr. Yuri Verkhoshansky as well as Dr. Michael Yeses' work. Links are in the description. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And if you made it this far, I have a gift for you. 30 days filled with kettlebell workouts for free. Check the first link in the description.